Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated while I introduce our honored guests. Major General David J. Francis, the Army Aviation Branch Chief and Commanding General of the United States Army Aviation Center of Excellence. Chief Warrant Officer 5, Michael R. Gwyn, escorted by Hall of Fame member, Chief Warrant Officer 5, retired Daniel J. R. Gelada. Miss Kathleen Hamilton, for the late Chief Warrant Officer 5, retired Jack Dotterer, escorted by Hall of Fame member, Brigadier General retired Rod Wolf. Miss Karen Slanker, for the late Major General Ed Browne, escorted by Hall of Fame member, Major General retired Andy Andreessen. And ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the United States Army Aviation Hall of Fame Board of Trustees, Chief Warrant Officer 5, retired Randy Jones.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home the brave?
Honored guests, fellow Hall of Fame inductees, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the U.S. Army Aviation Hall of Fame 28th induction ceremony. Please charge your glasses. We'll offer a toast. Here's to our inductees, our armed forces everywhere, particularly those who are deployed elsewhere in the world, for all their families and all our past and present warriors who protect freedom worldwide. Hear, hear. And now, if you would, remain standing. Sonny, if you'll come forth and offer our invocation.
Airborne. Hey, good to see you. Let's bow together and pray. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks tonight for the joy of being together. Thank you for the joy and excitement in this room. We are grateful to be together after 3 years. And Father, we thank you tonight for the purpose that calls us together to honor 3 great American heroes and their families that represent the very best in Army Aviation. God, we thank you for these 3 that we honored tonight, for their courage, and for their example, and for their sacrifices to our nation. And God, we are inspired by their lives to make our lives count, to do our best, to be a good friend, to be a good neighbor, and be a good Samaritan. Lord, and to give our very best for our neighbor and for our country and for our God. Tonight, Father, the eyes of the world are on Ukraine, and we do pray for the brave people there. We pray, God, for their protection, for their provision, and for peace in Ukraine. Lord, do bless now the program tonight. Bless our food and fellowship around these tables. We ask and pray in the name of the King, eternal, immortal, invisible, the only wise God. To him be glory forever and ever. Amen.
Again, we thank you, Sonny. Please be seated and enjoy your dinner. Watch the screens displaying the fine sponsors that help make this night possible. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed your dinner tonight. Tonight, we're going to celebrate the 49th anniversary of the U.S. Army Aviation Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is a real hall located at Fort Rucker, Alabama, where portraits and citations of our inductees document their very valuable contributions to Army aviation. 3 individuals will join this group tonight that made an indelible impact on our branch and indeed upon organic U.S. Army aviation. Since its inception, nearly 80 years ago, on June 6, 1942. Counting our new inductees, there are only 181 members of the Hall of Fame to date. These individuals represent a broad spectrum of our community, including 110 officers, 36 warrant officers, 23 enlisted soldiers, 9 aviation industry individuals, and 3 government employees. 19 members of the Aviation Hall of Fame are Medal of Honor recipients. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to recognize the President of the Army Aviation Association of America, Major General retired Tim Crosby. As you know, Quad A underwrites all costs of the Aviation Hall of Fame and the portraits that actually hang in the hall at Fort Rucker Museum. The production of costs for this event and all its associated activities, travel, and lodging of our inductees and escorts. Thank you, sir. Next, will the current trustees for the Army Aviation Hall of Fame please stand and be recognized? All the current trustees. And along with them, remain standing, please, the remainder of Hall of Fame inductees. Please rise and be recognized. Thank you very much. Before we begin this evening's inductions, please welcome again the Commanding General, United States Army Aviation Center of Excellence at Fort Rucker, Alabama, Major General David J. Francis. Please join us on stage and assist with our induction tonight, sir. And now it's my privilege to begin the Army Aviation Hall of Fame 28th induction ceremony. Our Master of Ceremonies since 2017, Mr. David Hartman, the first host of ABC's Good Morning America, is unable to be with us tonight. However, he has provided the voiceover for our inductees' videos, as he has done for the past 9 sessions. We wish him well and anticipate his return to our next induction ceremony next year at the Quad A Summit in Nashville in April of 2023. Our first inductee tonight is Chief Warrant Officer 5, retired Michael R. Gumby Gwyn. Please direct your attention to the screens.
CW5, retired Michael Gwyn, was born in Chicago on October 3rd, 1955, and came to his aviation career through his family. His father, Colonel John Gwyn, was a B-25 navigator in the South Pacific during World War II. His maternal grandfather was an early aviator who started an airport in Hinton, West Virginia, and taught his daughter, Mike's famous mother, Ruth, how to fly. Ruth was one of the first licensed female aviators in West Virginia and became a flight instructor who taught hundreds of students to become fighter and bomber pilots during World War II. With Mom as his teacher, Mike soloed at 16 and continued through commercial and flight instructor ratings. He enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1976 and was named 1977 Battalion Soldier of the Year for the 10th Combat Engineer Battalion in Germany. But Mike had always loved to fly, and in May 1980, he became an Aero Scout pilot. In May 1982, Mike was accepted in the 160th SOAR, where he quickly achieved Basic Mission Qualified, Full Mission Qualified, and Flight Lead Qualified, well ahead of his contemporaries. Here, Mike became one of the founding fathers of Army Aviation Special Operations and one of the original authors of the 160th SOPs. Many of the tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs, that he drafted for MH-6 helicopter operations are still in use today. In October 1983, Mike flew in combat in Operation Urgent Fury in Grenada and deployed on numerous other missions. After that, he was one of the primary developers and instructors of the initial Green Platoon of the 160th SOAR. In late December 1987, during Operation Prime Chance, where he was constantly under fire, Mike flew an MH-6 over the Persian Gulf, often all night, escorting tankers which the Iranians were trying to destroy. In 1988, while a liaison officer attached to a Navy Special Mission Unit in Virginia, Mike met his future wife, Kelly. Their son, Michael, born in 1990, served as an infantry officer in Afghanistan and is now an attorney in Washington, D.C. In the fall of 1989, the Flight Concepts Division asked for, and got, Mike, where he continued as an instructor and examiner. Qualified in a wide variety of fixed and rotary wing aircraft with vast experience and talents, he was selected to support Task Force Ranger. On October 3rd and 4th, 1993, during the Battle of Mogadishu, Somalia, Mike flew a highly modified Kiowa, 17 and a half hours without shutting down. Despite intense enemy fire, he maneuvered his aircraft and provided real-time visuals for the TF Ranger commander and staff. Providing some of the world's first ISR support, Mike directed forces through a hostile urban environment to link up with and extract the ground force. For his actions, he was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. Mike went on to fly many more missions between 1996 and 2002 in Bosnia, in 2002 and 2003 in Afghanistan, for which he won a Bronze Star, and from 2003 to 2006 in Iraq. Most of these missions remain classified, like a large majority of his achievements in aviation research, system development, and flight training. Throughout his tenure, Mike served in every leadership position, including selection and training commander, standardization instructor pilot, and D-Troop fixed wing commander. After 30 years of service, having achieved 12 aircraft type ratings and flown over 12,000 flight hours in fixed and rotary wing aircraft, Mike retired from active duty in March 2007, but he didn't retire from aviation. Mike continued to train Special Mission Unit pilots in many different aircraft, retiring in 2020 with over 16,000 hours. He is the first and only person certified by the FAA to conduct flight evaluations of the Russian Mi series helicopter and is an FAA designated pilot examiner for airplanes and helicopters. He continues to consult with Army Aviation, the Department of Defense, and Special Ops. And perhaps most satisfying of all for him, he now runs the Hinton-Alderson Airport in West Virginia that his grandfather started. And by the way, the airport where he learned to fly. Respected leader and mentor and pioneer in Special Ops, please welcome CW5 retired Michael Gwyn to the Army Aviation Hall of Fame.
Congratulations. Please come forward, Mike, with your Hall of Fame escort, CW5 retired Dan Gelada.
Well, first of all, I'm honored to be here today and to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. I could go down through a whole laundry list of all the people I know in here that have contributed to this, and I don't want to insult anybody by forgetting them, so I'm going to move on with this a little bit. One, though, I received the notification that I was going to be inducted right before Christmas from Emmett Schaefer, and Emmett had been an advocate for me for my induction, and I appreciate him for that. Then I received a FedEx mailing in the mail, and the FedEx letter had a list of tasks that I had to do as an inductee and suspension dates, right? Because no good deed goes unpunished, right? I want to thank Janice Arena, and she is all over this, and people don't even realize what all she does. I mean, she's just amazing. So Janice, thank you very much. I asked Janice how long I should speak, and she said about 1 or 2 minutes. And as anybody that knows me can attest, I've never spoken for just 1 or 2 minutes about anything ever. So I will do my best. I was fortunate in my 40-year career to be surrounded by many great officers, warrant officers, and NCOs. I served my entire time at the company and the battalion level, even after I retired. I count 21 Hall of Famers. I guess Hall of Famers is kind of bad, but I count 21 members of the Hall of Fame as members that I served with at that level. And 12 of those I flew with, sometimes out of curiosity. I have a couple of defining moments that stick out to me. They probably don't stick out to other people, but to me. And the first was a CW4 Wise, and he was the SP of the 2nd of the 17th Cav when I got there in 1981. He felt that I could challenge the IP course. I was a W1, not long out of flight school. I did have an FAA airplane flight instructor certificate, and CW4 Wise thought that I was up for the deal to go and get evaluated. So I flew a 58 down to Fort Rucker and walked up to the DES front door and knocked on it, said, "Here I am." They were not very happy to see me, right? After 3 lovely days with DES, I returned to B Troop of the 2nd 17th as a W1 IP. I would spend the next 40 years as an instructor pilot. In May of 1982, the week I pinned on CW2, I assessed for the 160th. This man gave me my assessment ride. I had no idea what the 160th did, but I knew I really wanted to go there. I knew several guys there, one of which was Austin Norton. Austin and I were in the cab together in 1980, and he was already in the 160th. Austin and I have literally spent just about 40 years assigned together, many times seated in the same office, flying together in the same helicopter and airplane. Somehow, we both lived through that, despite Austin repeating verbatim every play of every single New England Patriots game. The week after I assessed to the 160th, I was at the flight line of B Troop of the 2nd 17th Cav when I received a phone call from Warrant Officer Branch. The CW4 from Branch said that he had the perfect assignment for me, and that was to PCS to Fort Rucker to be an OH-58 Scout IP. I told him I had assessed for the 160th, and that was what I planned to do. He said to think it over, and he would call back in a couple days. A few days later, he called and said I was accepted into the 160th, and that's what I wanted to do. He was not happy about my decision. He said the 160th Task Force wouldn't be around in another year. And he said that I would never receive a preferential assignment. Oh well. In 1983, and don't worry, I'm not going through every year here. All right. But 1983 was a bad year for the 160th. 16 Night Stalkers died that year in training, plus another in combat. Just before Labor Day weekend, the 101st Division Commander summoned all the 160th pilots to a conference room, and he told us that we were a disgrace to Army Aviation, and that the unit would not turn another blade. I wasn't ashamed. I was literally pissed off. We were all doing demanding work and not carelessly. Most of these accidents were flying over water at night with night vision goggles. No one anywhere was doing that kind of flying. We were not intentionally reckless. We were charting unfamiliar territory. But the 160th didn't shut down. And 2 months later, when I returned from Grenada and stepped off a C-5 at Fort Campbell, the same 101st Division commander shook my hand and said I was a hero. The task force literally went from 0 to hero in 2 months. But the impact of those demanding and costly early years of the 160th, the impact of that is the capabilities and successes of all of Army Aviation, especially in the last 20 years. In 1988, a lieutenant colonel named Doug Browne sent me to be a liaison officer to a special mission unit in Virginia Beach. As a single W3, I was pretty excited to be going TDY to Virginia Beach. 5 days after I got there, I met my wife, Kelly, on a blind date. We married a year later, and she is correct when she says she saved me from being stupid. Kelly and I are a great team, and my induction is as much hers as it is mine. Kelly steadied the course through many deployments, all while holding down a career of her own. And our son is a great testament to her riding his butt. In the late 90s, I assessed pilots and NCOs for assignment to my unit. I would go to the Hoffman building up in Arlington and review personnel files of officers and warrant officers. I was eligible for W5 at the time, and the records branch suggested that I review my file. I had never seen my file before. So I opened my file, and on the left side there was one of the cardstock covers of a bunch of documents that said for official use only, and handwritten there in big letters, it said, "Do not provide assignment of choice."
Oops.
I don't think that W4 in 1982 knew how to spell preferential. And I hope he got a preferential assignment himself. In 2007, I retired after 30 years active and immediately assumed the position of a contract instructor. I wasn't sure how I'd like that job, but about 3 months after I retired, I realized that I didn't have to do anything but teach. I loved it. Somehow the years went by, and now I'm standing here, and I'm really a guy who just did his job. This is truly the honor of a lifetime. I find the timing to be fitting because 50 years ago this summer, I soloed on our grass runway up in West Virginia. And that day, my mom, who was my instructor pilot, got in with me. We went around the pattern a couple times, and then she said to let her out. And with the engine running, she leaned over to me and she said, 3 times around the pattern, 3 landings and taxi in. And then she looked at me and she said, don't do anything stupid. That's what I've attempted to follow my whole career. Thank you very much.
Here tonight to help Mike celebrate is his wife Kelly, son Michael T. Gwyn, brother Jeff Gwyn, and numerous friends and comrades he served with in the past. Would you all please stand and be recognized? Our next inductee, and a true friend of mine as well as Mike, is Chief Warrant Officer 5, Jack H. Dotterer, deceased. Please direct your attention again to our screens.
Jack Dotterer's most lasting achievements resulted from his brilliant and relentless acquisition and program management skills during his Army career in the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment's Systems Integration and Management Office, SIMO, and his 20-year civilian career as a SETA Systems Engineering and Technical Assistance contractor at Vertical Flight's Technical Leading Edge in the Technology Application Program Office, TAPO, at Fort Eustis, Virginia. Jack Dotterer was born in Monmouth, New Jersey on 11 October 1950 and joined the U.S. Army in 1968. Graduating from flight school in 1969, he was deployed to Vietnam, where he flew more than 1,000 hours supporting combat operations. In 1984, Jack became a plank holder in Task Force 160, the predecessor to the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, SOAR, and served for 6 years as an aviation maintenance officer and platoon leader. In 1990, Jack began serving in SOAR's Skunk Works, the Systems Integration and Management Office, SIMO. As program manager for the UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter, Jack led the development of major upgrades in its cockpit, weapons, and air refueling, totally changing the aircraft's DNA and skillfully brought together the Black Hawk's 3 configurations, Alpha, Lima, and Kilo, into a single platform. Jack wrote the requirements for these aircraft, heading their acquisition and their fielding in time for them to play a significant role in Desert Storm. In the early 1990s, Jack led a major upgrade of the avionics for the MH-47 Chinook. These digital cockpits were so successful that they were subsequently placed in all of the Army Chinooks. Dotterer also proved to be a highly capable logistician and enterprise strategic planner. He was instrumental in the establishment of the SOF Aviation Depot at Lexington Bluegrass Army Depot. Jack championed the effort, ferociously fought for it, and drove it to be the national treasure it is today. It became the model for the Army's prototype integration facility and the logistics support facility, LSF. From 1996 through 1999, Jack led the adaptation of a commercial engine for the Black Hawk, which was 30% more powerful and gave the aircraft more carrying capacity. This allowed the longest assaults in Army aviation history, fully loaded, sometimes up to 16,000 feet over the mountains of Afghanistan. That said, Jack had tremendous operational credibility as a former CW-5. On 31 December 1999, Jack retired after 31 years of military service, serving in both conventional and special operations units. He had over 6,500 flight hours, 1,280 of those in combat. After the Army, while working as a CETA contractor from 1999 to 2019 at TAPO, Jack delivered unique capabilities to our national defense leadership as the senior MH-60 program integrator. Jack had the heart of a warrior, the brain of an engineer, and the work ethic of very few other men. Beginning in Vietnam and continuing for the rest of his life, he was called, with admiration and affection, Mad Jack. He was a patriot who intentionally stayed out of the public spotlight. Teamwork, values, and mission accomplishment were hallmark traits of Jack Dotterer. Many of his contributions to Army aviation technologies are still used to this day, and many have provided the foundation for advances in weapon systems, aircraft survivability, communications, and the cockpit systems that have proliferated across the entire Army. Jack Dotterer passed away long before his time in 2019 and worked in support of Army aviation and special operations until the very end. He was in his office on Monday, entered hospice on Thursday, and passed away just 2 days later on Saturday. He was the quintessential Night Stalker. He never quit. His legacy will be felt by thousands of both conventional and special operations aviators and crews for decades to come. For his professional dedication, teamwork, love of country, and contributions to our country, Jack Dotterer is more than deserving of induction into the Army Aviation Hall of Fame.
Accepting the induction on behalf of her late husband, Kathleen Hamilton, please come forward with your Hall of Fame escort, Brigadier General Retired Rodney D. Wolf.
It will be just a few. First of all, I want to thank everyone for this amazing honor. I met Jack when he was retiring from the Army. He did not want to retire from the Army. I believe he asked to stay another 3 years, but for him it would have been another 3 years. But he did retire, and he eventually went to Fort Eustis, and thank goodness he got to work on his beloved Black Hawk programs. He loved his Black Hawks. He also loved his family and our family. I think some of you may know Jack went through some very tough times with some very personal losses, and he came through those because he was such a strong person, and he kept his sense of humor and went to work every day for the job that he loved and with the people he loved. And as was mentioned, he went to work on a Monday, called me and said, "Well, I'm not sure I'll be here too long." I said, "Well, that's fine, come on home." 5 or 6 hours later, he made it home. And then about 6 days later, we lost him. He loved the people he served with, and I don't know what else to say. Like I said, I was not really what I would call the military wife, but he told me many, many stories. Many were funny, some were terrifying, that he went through with probably some of you all in this room, and I'm not sure how you survived some of those stories. But he was a very special person, and he was greatly loved by everyone in his family and my family. And thank you. Thank you so much for this.
Please be seated. Here to help the Dotterer family celebrate our Kathleen's grandson, whom I got to enjoy an evening with last night, Zachary Adams, and a cherished grandson of Jack. Her sister, Margaret Badowski. Would you please stand and be recognized? Our final inductee this evening is Major General Edward M. Browne, deceased. Please again direct your attention to the screens.
Major General Edward M. Browne was born in 1930 in New York City during the Depression. He was raised by his aunt and uncle in Brownsville, Texas, and was drafted into the Army in 1950 as a high school graduate early in the Korean War. 2 years later, in 1952, he was commissioned as a be-all-you-can-be Transportation Corps Second Lieutenant. Over the next 24 years, with each duty in the United States, Korea, Germany, and Vietnam, Ed became more and more expert in aviation maintenance and logistics. As a result, he was selected as the best possible program manager to take charge of the very challenging Advanced Attack Helicopter program during the competitive fly-off in April 1976. What resulted was the Army's premier attack helicopter to this very day, the AH-64 Apache. Inheriting an at-risk program with many challenges in management, design, and funding, Ed addressed them all. For management issues, Ed toured a Toyota plant in Japan to gain insight into production efficiency. For design issues, Ed worked with private industry to help solve the Apache's flight and handling issues. Next, the Apache needed to engage Soviet tanks and anti-aircraft systems, so Ed drove the development of a new radar system. And since the Apache needed new weapons systems, Ed and his team selected a 30mm cannon and Hellfire missiles with highly effective targeting acquisition and fire control, and integrated leading-edge technologies of armament, targeting, and weapons systems, even as the aircraft itself was being developed. As for funding issues, the Apache twice suffered congressional funding cuts during the development and pre-production testing, but Ed was a fighter and very persuasive. Meeting with congressional and DoD staffers, Ed's powerful arguments helped get the funding restored. Pushing the Apache while in competition with the Army's other Big Five programs was an enormous challenge. But again, Ed Browne was a dynamic and innovative leader who succeeded. In March 1982, Congress approved the production of the Apache. The next year, recognized as the guiding force behind the Apache, Ed accepted the Collier Trophy on behalf of the U.S. Army, Hughes Aircraft Helicopters, and the industry team for the greatest American aeronautic achievement of 1982. This was the first for a military helicopter and Army Aviation. On December 31, 1982, Major General Browne retired from the Army, but his preparation for rapid production of the Apache allowed it to be fielded quickly. This fielding had a strategic impact and helped the United States win the Cold War. The Apache remains the most advanced attack helicopter in the world, with over 2,400 in the U.S. Army and 16 allied nations. After his military career, Ed continued to aid the development of aircraft and rockets as an executive at Martin Marietta. Sadly, He passed away just last year. Having changed the face of battle against enemy armor and infantry, able to fly day and night in some of the most unforgiving areas of the world, Major General Browne shaped the Apache into a phenomenal weapon system that's highly survivable and a national asset. For over 40 years, the Apache has enabled our Army aviators to deliver devastating effects in combat, helped fight the global war on terror, and has deterred aggression around the world. Able to work with many organizations and many people, Ed was widely admired and even loved. And now, for outstanding service to the nation and the Army, Major General Edward M. Browne is rightfully honored with induction into the Army Aviation Hall of Fame.
Congratulations. Accepting her late father's induction is Miss Karen Slacker. Please come forward with your Hall of Fame escort, Major General Retired Andy Andreessen.
Joke. I've never been known to talk less than half an hour on any given subject, and that's a joke too. So, first of all, I would like to say thank you from the bottom of my family's heart, and to dedicate this evening to our father, Edward M. Browne. He was not a privileged child. He did not come from a privileged family. He, in fact, spent time in an orphanage as a child during the Depression. He was lucky enough to have his maternal aunt and her husband, who had no children of their own, take him into their family and take him to Brownsville, Texas. He grew up there being loved and cherished by them. He received an excellent basic education and was a very, very good student. He was also extremely athletic, and he even was a Golden Gloves boxer in his youth. He rode horses, he shot 6 guns, he swam and fished and hunted and had a wonderful childhood that he would have never had without them. He called them Mama and Papa, and they loved him as their own. And we loved them too when we came along. So he met our mom in McAllen, Texas. She was 17, he was 20. He, shortly after their wedding, was drafted into the United States Army. So they quickly arranged a wedding and got married, and off he went to basic training. They stayed, we weren't around yet. They stayed in Brownsville with the family, their mom and dads, who both lived there, and they took care of us while Dad was off at school. And most of you know that the Army is all about school. Once you get in there, you're going to school for the rest of your life. He was a very, very smart person. He worked extremely hard, and I believe he would have been successful at anything he attempted. But the Army gave him focus, a sense of belonging that he really didn't have as a child. So his comrades and the people around him, his mentors and senior people, just were everything to him, and he excelled, and he went through the ranks. He was in Korea, Vietnam a couple times. We remember as kids staring at the TV, looking for him while the Vietnam War was on TV. It was really frightening. Anyway, long story short, he continued to excel. We lived in many, many duty stations, Fort Eustis, St. Louis. He was chosen then to go to St. Louis. So there he became the program manager for the Apache helicopter. And he was so proud of that position. And he was a real collaborator. He wanted the people who served under him to receive the credit that was due for all of the work because it was such a huge project. Some of the people who he worked with wanted to be here tonight. One is Les Gilbert. He worked tirelessly for many years along with Kurt Herrick and Andy Andreessen to have Dad nominated to the Hall of Fame. And they were finally successful this year, and for that we're eternally grateful. He was a collaborator. He really, really loved the people he worked with, and many of them loved him too. Mr. Apache is what we called him at home. So I'm so sorry that he was not able to be here to accept this award on his own. It would have really, really been amazing. But we are so grateful to all of you for inducting him into the Hall of Fame. Thank you all so much.
Here to help celebrate are Karen's husband, Andy, Major General Browne's other daughter, Lauren Norman, her husband, Greg, and daughter, Rachel Conklin, Karen's son, Justin Wall, and his wife, Josie Ramirez Wall, as well as friends Barbara Browne and Dennis Welling. Would you please stand and be recognized? Ladies and gentlemen, as you can well imagine, there are many people we owe thanks to for helping the Army Aviation Hall of Fame salute our 2022 class. Thanks to John Fishback, our video producer, for all his coordination and support, and the whole Quad A team, especially Janice, who takes such great care of the awardees and Hall of Fame inductees. We want to thank you all for coming tonight. I thank you for your attendance this evening and for your continued outstanding support for the U.S. Army Aviation Hall of Fame. On behalf of all its members, you have our deep gratitude for your support and recognition. And I would now ask that our Quad A President, Major General Retired Tim Crosby, and incoming Board of Trustees, Chairman Command Sergeant Major Retired Todd Gladwell, to join me at the podium as we prepare to transition the gavel.
Well, good evening, everybody. I have the difficult task to thank somebody who has been so dedicated to our Army, to Army Aviation, and the Hall of Fame. When I think of Randy, I think of a professional, I think of a dedicated individual, but most importantly, that what I really love about him is his humility, how humble he is. He doesn't even think he deserves to be in this Hall of Fame, and he's done such a masterful job overseeing and running it. We couldn't be more proud of Randy. We've given him every damn award we got. We can't give him anything else. So I figured whatever better than a Browne liquor bottle of drink, buddy. Following in his footsteps is another great American, another great Hall of Fame member, former Sergeant Major of the branch, Command Sergeant Major Todd Gladwell. I know Todd knows that he's got some big shoes to fill, but I'm confident he's up to the task. He's already shown great leadership and vision in transitioning and working with Randy, so please help me welcome Todd Gladwell to the chairman of our Hall of Fame committee.
Randy, I look forward to carrying forward your stewardship in the Hall of Fame, and I thank you for all you've done in carrying forward our aviation history and our Hall of Fame history, and the legacy that you and all the other former chairmen have set forth. We will try to continue on with your work, and thank you, and please, I hope that I can still call upon you from time to time and draw from your experience. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please mark your calendars for the 29th Hall of Fame ceremony here in Nashville, Tennessee on a Thursday night, April 27, 2013. I ask that all this evening's inductees, their families, friends, and escorts to remain in the vicinity for a few minutes so we can take some photos with the portraits. Meanwhile, let's give all of our Hall of Fame class of 2022 one final round of applause.
Please take your seats. I want to give Randy the opportunity to cuss me out, and I mean to have a chance to say a few things. And then I want us all to stand and recognize him when he's done, and I hope he'll bring some tears to his eyes because we love him.
Thank you, sir. I could not have been more fortunate to be a part, not only Quad A, but be humbled by the idea that Ben Harrison, former chairman of the trustees, thought that I was maybe an asset to the trustees. I came on early on, and I got to enjoy his mentorship. I got to enjoy Hal Kushner, who is my Savior as well as Jesus. He has saved me my bacon a number of times. He really is an incredible asset to this nation, not just this Hall of Fame, not just Quad A. And his service as a physician, particularly to veterans with serious injuries and post-traumatic syndrome, no matter what the malady. You could call on him any time. Many times you didn't have to call on him. He knew you had a problem and he went and found you, made sure you got the care you needed. All of us here attest to the other people in our lives that mean so much. And I would not for 1 second think that I could do what I do, the rest of the trustees could do what they could do, without the care and the love of their families, in particular their wives. My wife, Judy, thank you. You've been a blessing. You have been with me throughout this whole tour with the trustees. I'd have to ask Bill when I started, but I think I've been with them close to 12 or 15 years. In the last 5, of course, was honored to serve as chairman. And I can tell you right now, this nation's in good hands with our soldiers and aviators. It's in good hands with all the rest of the Department of Defense. And we just have to pray to stay together. We stay focused on all the freedoms we enjoy and take advantage of this nation's greatest natural resource, which are our young children and adults. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for this opportunity. Night Stalkers don't quit, 6 guns don't miss.